In a world where messages travel thousands of kilometers in fractions of a second, where virtual hugs replace real ones and likes become the currency of approval, the very nature of human connections is changing. The digital revolution has not just transformed the ways we communicate, it has reshaped the very fabric of emotional contacts between people. Empathy, that amazing ability to feel another's pain and joy as your own, finds itself at the crossroads of technological changes. What happens to our ability to empathize when a screen becomes the mediator between hearts? Do digital technologies strengthen our emotional connection, allowing us to instantly respond to events in the lives of loved ones? Or, on the contrary, do they create an illusion of closeness behind which lies a growing chasm of misunderstanding? Is it possible to preserve the depth of human contact in a world where communication increasingly occurs without direct eye contact, without the ability to catch subtle changes in a conversational partner's voice, without tactile contact? The history of human communication is a journey from immediacy to mediation. For millennia, people communicated face-to-face, reading the slightest changes in facial expressions, intonation, and posture of their interlocutor. Our ancestors sat by campfires, transmitting stories and emotions through direct contact, where every breath and glance mattered. In this primary form of communication, empathy was a natural process. The brain literally reflected the emotional state of the interlocutor through the work of mirror neurons. The advent of writing in the 4th millennium BC marked the first major shift. For the first time, people could convey thoughts without physical presence, but the price of this was the loss of emotional richness. Letters traversed space but could not convey the timbre of a voice or the expression in eyes. The invention of the telegraph in the 19th century and the telephone soon after brought voice back into communication. Intonations, pauses, laughter. The emotional connection strengthened, but it still remained incomplete without visual contact. The real revolution occurred with the advent of the internet and smartphones. We gained the ability to instantly exchange not only texts, but also images, videos, and voice messages. Social networks created the illusion of constant presence in the lives of hundreds of people simultaneously. But paradoxically, the greater the technical capabilities became, the more blurred the depth of emotional contact became. When we look into the eyes of our interlocutor, our brain launches an amazing neurobiological mechanism. Mirror neurons, special cells discovered by Italian scientists in the 90s of the last century, are activated identically when we perform an action ourselves or observe another person performing it. It is these neurons that create the neural basis of empathy, allowing us to literally reflect the emotional state of our interlocutor. During direct contact, our brain reads micro-expressions, body language, and vocal intonations, all of which form a full-fledged empathic response. But what happens when a digital barrier arises between us and another person? Studies show that the activity of mirror neurons significantly decreases during online communication. Without access to the full spectrum of non-verbal cues, our brain operates in conditions of emotional deficit. Text messages lack intonations. Video calls do not convey subtle sense and the energy of presence, and communication delays disrupt the natural rhythm of dialogue. The limbic system, an ancient part of the brain responsible for emotional reactions, suffers particularly. It is evolutionarily tuned to direct interaction and literally starves in the digital environment. However, the brain is remarkably plastic. Recent research shows that with regular online communication, compensatory mechanisms are formed. We learn to recognize emotions by other signs: word choice, punctuation use, response time. This is a kind of neural adaptation to the new communication reality. Interestingly, in children who grew up in the digital age, these adaptive mechanisms are more developed than in older generations. Their brains learn to interpret digital emotional signals from an early age. The internet and social media have created an unprecedented phenomenon: global empathy. For the first time in human history, we can instantly learn about the suffering of people on the other side of the planet and respond to it. Stories of refugees from hotspots, footage of natural disasters, personal dramas of ordinary people. All of this now penetrates our consciousness, bypassing geographical barriers. Digital platforms allow us to look into the lives of those we would never meet in person. We see the world through the eyes of a resident of an African village, a refugee from a war zone, or a person with a rare disease. This opportunity expands the boundaries of our empathy far beyond our immediate surroundings. The Black Lives Matter movement, campaigns in support of earthquake victims, mass solidarity actions with peoples in conflict zones, all these are examples of digital activism mobilizing collective empathy. A single post can launch a wave of support that spans continents. Platforms like GoFundMe have raised billions of dollars for people in need, demonstrating how virtual sympathy transforms into real help. This phenomenon is especially important for marginalized groups whose voices were not heard before. Hashtags become a powerful tool for uniting disparate stories into a single narrative, creating the effect of a collective experience. People with rare diseases find support in specialized online communities where they are understood better than in their real-life environment. Digital empathy also gives rise to new forms of charity, from crowdfunding to volunteer digital initiatives where everyone can contribute regardless of location. Behind the outward coherence of the digital world lies its darker side: the growing depersonalization of communication. Gadget screens become not just intermediaries, but barriers, behind which the humanity of the interlocutor is blurred. Anonymity and physical distance create a dangerous cocktail that lowers the threshold of empathy to critical values. We no longer see a living person, only an avatar, a nickname, lines of text. This fundamentally changes our perception of other people, transforming them from fully fledged personalities into abstract objects. The phenomenon of online disinhibition, described by psychologist John Suler, explains why people in the network say and do things they would never allow themselves to do in person. The lack of visual feedback, not seeing how your words make another person cry, destroys the natural mechanisms of empathetic inhibition. Trolling and cyberbullying become the most vivid manifestations of the empathetic deficit of the digital age. Behind offensive comments often stand ordinary people who, in real life, might be caring parents or responsive friends. But in the digital space, their capacity for empathy seems to switch off. Comments under news about tragedies filled with cynicism and dark humor demonstrate how easily the digital environment turns human suffering into an abstraction. Studies show an alarming trend. Teenagers who spend more than 6 hours daily on social media exhibit significantly lower empathy scores compared to peers who prefer face-to-face communication. Particularly vulnerable are those who are in the process of forming emotional intelligence. The digital environment becomes a territory of emotional alienation, where human pain is devalued and compassion atrophies due to the constant stream of tragic news. When intonation, facial expressions, and gestures disappear in online correspondence, a new visual language of emotions comes to the rescue. Yellow circles with smiles, hearts, and crying faces have become a universal way to convey feelings in the digital space. Emojis, these small icons, have transformed into a global emotional alphabet, understandable regardless of the language of communication. Studies show that using emojis activates the same brain areas as perceiving real human faces, creating a semblance of an emotional response. However, this response is significantly weaker than during real contact. The brain recognizes a smiling emoticon as a symbol of joy, but does not experience the full emotional resonance characteristic of live communication. This is a kind of emotional surrogate, understandable, but not fully satisfying our need for empathetic contact. Stickers and memes expand this visual vocabulary, adding cultural contexts and nuances. By sending each other pictures of famous characters in characteristic situations, we create complex emotional messages, encrypted in visual codes. These codes are becoming increasingly sophisticated. From simple emoticons, we move to multi-layered memes, understandable only to the initiated. A peculiar emotional cryptography is forming, where the meaning lies not only in the image itself, but also in the context of its use, its origin story, and associated associations. Such communication requires constant updating of the emotional vocabulary and creates new challenges for empathy. Understanding the feelings of the interlocutor now depends not only on the ability to empathize, but also on knowledge of the constantly evolving visual language of the network. Imagine you could, for a few minutes, become a refugee crossing the sea in an overcrowded boat, or experience the life of a person with autism in a noisy shopping mall. Virtual reality technologies open up fundamentally new opportunities for developing empathy, allowing you to literally immerse yourself in someone else's experience. Unlike texts, photographs, or videos, VR creates a sense of presence, a fundamental property that changes the depth of the emotional response. Studies show that after a VR simulation of a homeless person's experience, participants not only expressed more sympathy, but also more frequently signed petitions in support of social housing. MIT's, quote, project allows one to experience discrimination, while the, quote, program provides the opportunity to see the world through the eyes of a person with dementia. These technologies don't just create understanding, they form an emotional memory, as if the event happened to you personally. Neuroscientists record activity in the same brain regions as during a real experience. However, technological empathy has its limitations. Even the most perfect simulation remains a temporary experience from which one can exit with a single button press. Unlike real people who live in these conditions constantly, there is a risk of transforming others' suffering into a form of entertainment or suffering tourism. Critics also note that VR can create the illusion of complete understanding, although the true experience is always deeper and more complex than any simulation. The future of VR empathy lies in the realm of interpersonal relationships. Technology will allow not only immersion into the generalized experience of social groups, but also literally seeing the world through the eyes of specific loved ones, sharing their emotional reactions and bodily sensations. Different generations perceive digital empathy in completely different ways. This is a natural consequence of different socialization experiences. Digital natives, young people from generations Z and Alpha, born after 2000, do not know a world without the internet and smartphones. For them, emojis and memes are not just an addition to communication, but a full-fledged emotional language with complex grammar and nuances. Studies show that teenagers are capable of distinguishing dozens of emotional shades in seemingly identical emoticons, grasping the context in which they are used. Their brains have been adapted since childhood to decode digital emotional signals. At the same time, young people exhibit an interesting paradox. High sensitivity to global problems coupled with a decrease in empathy in direct communication. They can deeply empathize with the fate of endangered animal species or inhabitants of distant countries, but struggle to recognize the emotions of a real person right in front of them. Digital immigrants, representatives of generations X and Boomers, demonstrate the opposite trend. People whose socialization occurred before the internet era often perceive online emotions as incomplete, simplified versions of real feelings. They find it harder to grasp subtle emotional signals in text messages, and they more often misinterpret the tone of written communication. However, they usually retain a higher ability to read non-verbal cues in face-to-face interaction. This intergenerational difference creates fertile ground for emotional misunderstandings. When a grandmother perceives her grandchild's brief message as a sign of coldness, and a teenager doesn't understand why a serious problem can't be discussed in a messenger, we observe a clash of different empathic cultures. Interestingly, virtual reality can become a bridge between generations, offering older people an immersion into the digital experiences of young people, and younger people the opportunity to feel the value of direct contact. In the world of digital communications, developing empathy requires conscious effort. Start by practicing mindful message reading. Don't just skim the text, but try to hear the person's voice. Imagine their emotional state. Ask clarifying questions if you're unsure of the message's tone. A simple, "How are you feeling right now?" can open the door to genuine emotional connection. Regularly move important conversations from text format to video calls. Seeing the interlocutor's face is critically important for maintaining an empathetic connection. Practice digital detox. Designate days or hours of complete disconnection from online communication, returning to direct contacts. This digital pause allows the brain to restore natural empathic mechanisms. Create deeper digital rituals. Instead of formal likes, send detailed voice messages. Share not only achievements but also doubts. Keep an empathy journal, noting moments when you succeeded or failed to feel another's emotions through the digital barrier. Analyze these cases, identifying which factors help or hinder emotional connection. Use technology consciously. Set up notifications so they don't distract from deep communication. Avoid multitasking during important conversations. Remember, empathy requires presence, even if it's virtual. Educational institutions and business organizations are becoming key players in shaping an empathetic digital culture. Universities worldwide are introducing courses in digital ethics, where students not only study theory, but also practice empathetic interaction in an online environment. Stanford University launched the Digital Citizenship Program, teaching students conscious and ethical online behavior. Program participants note a significant increase in their ability to recognize the emotional state of interlocutors in online discussions. In schools, interactive lessons are appearing where children, through game scenarios, learn to recognize cyberbullying and practice empathetic communication. The corporate world has also recognized the value of emotional intelligence in the digital environment. Companies like Microsoft and Google are developing internal remote work standards that include practices for maintaining emotional connection in distributed teams. Virtual coffee breaks, digital rituals for recognizing colleagues' achievements, special channels for informal communication. These tools help preserve humanity in working relationships. Corporate experiments with, quote, are particularly interesting, where employees communicate only in person or via video call, completely excluding text messages. Such practices show astonishing results in improving team understanding. The most progressive organizations are implementing feedback systems that allow evaluating not only work results, but also the quality of employees' empathetic communication. Technology doesn't stand still, and today we're witnessing a real breakthrough in creating tools to improve emotional connection in the digital environment. Emotion tracking applications are becoming increasingly accurate and accessible. The Empathize program analyzes a caller's micro-expressions during video calls and highlights emotional states that a person might not be aware of or might be hiding. Mood Reader examines voice messages, identifying not only explicit emotions, but also hidden stress, fatigue, or insecurity in the speaker's voice. Algorithms for determining text sentiment have reached astonishing accuracy. Modern systems can detect sarcasm, hidden aggression, or depression even in seemingly neutral messages. Email services are implementing features that warn about a potentially harsh tone in an email, suggesting softening the wording before sending. Messengers are experimenting with systems that suggest emotionally appropriate responses to complex messages. Tactile feedback devices are particularly interesting, a technological solution to the problem of a lack of physical contact. Smart bracelets like Bond transmit touches over a distance. When one person touches their bracelet, the other feels a vibration, simulating that touch. Hug pillow cushions replicate the sensation of a hug, synchronizing with a partner's breathing over the internet. These devices are especially in demand among families separated by distance and couples in long-distance relationships. Artificial intelligence opens a new chapter in the development of empathetic communication. Emotional analysis systems are becoming intermediaries, helping people to better understand each other. AI assistants can recognize users' emotional patterns and suggest ways to express feelings more effectively. Neural networks are learning to adapt communication style to the emotional characteristics of different people, making digital communication more personalized and sensitive. Our journey through the digital landscapes of empathy is drawing to a close, and it is time to summarize this complex interplay of technology and human emotions. The digital era has brought us a paradoxical combination of global connectivity and emotional detachment. We can instantly learn about the fates of people on the other side of the planet, yet at the same time, we risk losing the depth of contact with those who are close by. Empathy in the digital age requires a new balance, a conscious combination of technological capabilities and human authenticity. The key to this balance lies in understanding that technology should enhance, not replace, direct experience. Video calls, emojis, virtual reality, all these tools are valuable not in themselves, but as an addition to live contact. We stand at the threshold of a new stage in the evolution of empathy, where digital and analog ways of experiencing empathy will become increasingly intertwined. Artificial intelligence will help us better understand emotional signals, and haptic devices will overcome physical distances. However, no technology will replace the power of eye contact, the warmth of a handshake, the embrace of a loved one. The future of empathy lies in a harmonious combination of digital capabilities with the wisdom of millennia of human experience. In a world of increasing automation, it is empathy that becomes the quality that defines our humanity. By preserving and developing this ability, we preserve ourselves.